Run around the block. Hi, Facebook. We are live. I got Mark from the UK, Dave from the VA. We are here with you guys. We're getting ready to pretty much talk about what we do for each client as an assessment and what our protocol set to make sure we can get clients ready to train. Because as you know, we don't just take clients and say, hey, I want to train, and we just hit the floor, because that wouldn't make any sense. So Mark's going to start off. He's going to give his little tidbit about what he does. Then Dave's going to go. Then I'm going to go, and we'll interject, and we'll talk about it. And then collectively, we'll get a consensus.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Ready.
Yeah.
Got anything nice to say to everybody?
Just want to say hello, guys, and thanks for checking in again. Like I say, I hope you're enjoying the content so far. All right, guys. So as Tony just said there, we're going to talk about how we do consultation with clients. Now, what should work well here is that the three of us run very different facilities or different businesses. So I primarily train clients one-to-one or like one-to-two, okay, together. So it's very different to maybe how Dave's doing it, which is in a much bigger group training environment. So the first thing that I do with my clients is very much changed from when I began as a trainer to now. When I used to do a consultation with the trainer, when I first started 11, 12 years ago, it would maybe be a hello, quick, fill out a questionnaire to say that they're medically sound to go, and then just go straight into it. Because I felt the need that you had to impress them, you had to kill them as a client, you know what I mean? They had to walk out sweating and everything like that. There was very little emphasis on finding out much information that is going to gather long-term results. So the first thing I do now is, obviously, if I have, it's generally email communication, because most of my clients come referrals or come from referrals, and then I send my consultation form away. Now, my initial consultation form is pretty in-depth. It goes through full medical background. It has a food diary attached to it. It has previous injuries, various things, skin conditions, whatever like that. So I'm trying to find as much information as I can. From there, the client books in the consultation, which is usually a minimum of an hour and a half. They come in to see me, but they must have sent the questionnaire back first, so we're not wasting time. Also, another why you should send the questionnaire out first is if you have a client that is on any form of medication. I don't know every medication in the world, obviously. It's very good to be able to research it beforehand, look online what it is, what are the contraindications, because that person may not be able to train, and it just makes you look a lot more professional. So I will read over the form, and then they come in, and I might have known some personal questions about them as well. That may sound silly, but if you come in and you ask about, how the kids are or anything like that, ask a personal thing, it instantly it forms a rapport, I think, with the client, and they remember stuff like that. So then I'll go through that form, usually for at least an hour. I will talk through nutrition, and I generally, with the information, I tend to just change two things. So the first time I see them, I only really change two things, and that's generally always their breakfast, because most people, particularly the people I see, either do not eat breakfast or their breakfast is pitiful, and change that, and I go introduce the lime and salt concoction that Charles Poliquin used to talk about many, many, many years ago. Once I've done that and explained that, I then get them in the gym, but it's generally for a real short period of time. I think you always should get your client in the gym in some capacity in the consultation. That might be literally to show them around. It might be to do a base thing like see how many chin-ups they can do. I often do some form of interval training just to show, because a lot of people are interested in interval training or high-intensity interval training. They don't really know what it is. I'll get them to do a 5-10 minute warm up, and then they might do literally 2 sets on a row machine, assault bike, ski erg, whatever like that. Then that hasn't took a huge amount of time. They usually die within a set or two, but they'll recover quickly. From there, they go off, and then they come back in. Now, the next session, it's usually, should I say, it's more about the 3rd or 4th session that I see them, that I actually do a full hour training session with them. So the next time they come in, maybe it's 2 or 3 days later, maybe a week later, I will review all of their nutrition and the things I asked them to do for a good half an hour, and then do about half an hour's worth of training. So it might be the A exercises of your program. Next session, we go through maybe 15 minutes of review and do maybe the A's and B's of the exercises. And then the 3rd or 4th session, do the full session. So although that seems like a long time, you're only seeing these clients for 1 or 2 hours a week, maybe 3 or 4 hours a week. You have to get the other shit right. So they have to get the food right. They have to get the supplements right. There's so many things, the mindset, whatever it is. things that you're trying to control. So I think if you can do those things early on, you'll get much better results down the road.
Mark, do you do any kind of body fat analysis, or how do you gauge that?
Yeah, sorry. So
And then do you do that? And also, do you actually do that for everybody too? Because what if it's somebody who is not necessarily that they care about body fat? Is that something you always do, or gauge
yes,
that per client?
no, it's a good question. So I try to do it if I can, or I certainly try and do some form of measurement. So the measurements that I'll generally use would be the calipers, so the skin called calipers. I'll use tape measurements, the scales if needs be, and potentially photographs. So all those things are obviously dependent on if the client's happy with it and are comfortable with it. But ideally, I will use the calipers. The issue with using calipers is the bigger the client. So let's say we have a guy that has a fairly rotund stomach. The accuracy of those measurements are going to be fairly poor. So that's when you must do tape measurements, okay, to do the circumference. So to give a quick example of that is if you see a person, you often see this with males that have a very big hard belly, like a beach ball. If you then drop some body fat, like let's say they drop 3 or 4 inches off the waist, nice analogy, and Owen Lacey talks about this, it's like deflating a beach ball, yeah? So all of a sudden, you can actually grab more fat. So in that first reading, you might have took 30 millimeters from the umbilical, and then all of a sudden you're taking 40. So, you know, you have to be very, very careful with what you do. But I
Yeah,
like to, yeah.
and I was just gonna add to that, and I know you probably were gonna go to this, but the relevancy of what you're talking about, Mark, is the visceral fat as opposed to subcutaneous fat. And visceral is always going to suppress first because it's around your organs and your body knows, and that's what's going to keep you more safe. So I think that's what you're talking about, right, Mark?
Definitely, yeah. So the subcutaneous fat is the one that you can pinch, and as Tony says, the visceral fat is more the internal fat. And with
Hence why the waist measurement makes way more sense.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that. I love that. Dave, what you got going on, brother? What do you do?
For everything in terms of just measurements. Measurements?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. I'm pretty sure that we all have kind of like the same relevantly.
Yeah, so for measurements, I do the in-body 570. So it's a bioimpedance. It's basically just wipe your thumbs off, wipe your feet off, stand on the scale, stand with your arms out, and it reads everything from obviously your body fat to segmental muscle mass. So left arm, right leg, left leg. Total body water, extracellular water. It's very important that you do it fasted or 2 hours prior to, like, you don't have anything in your system. I mean, with anything like body fat wise, you want to just do it, have a consistent reading. You don't want to like come in there fasted like the first day, then 3 weeks later you do it and you have like, you just chugged like 32 ounces of water. You know what I mean? It's going to actually make you look a lot leaner because you have that water. And then it's also going to make you look like you have a shit ton of muscle mass. So it's just really important with anything. You do it consistently. It's not like it's not like the most accurate thing. I mean, it's just consistent. Yeah, so that's what, were you going to say something, Mark?
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree. You know, that's the key thing is consistency. It's the same with caliper readings. It obviously needs to be done by the same person. Mm-hmm. Ideally, the same time of day, like Dave says. The cold can affect things as well. You know, if it's -10 outside compared to 30 degrees, that'll change how the skin feels, how the fat can feel. So exactly as Dave says, whatever you're using, there should be consistency with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Dave, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to say. It's hard. I can't even take you seriously with these sunglasses on, man. It's like, there you go. All right, go ahead, man.
Yeah. So what we also do, like, so I'll go over that reading with the client, like right after. I'll just tell them what it means, because a lot of people will just be like, "Oh shit!" Like this piece of paper, like what is it? What does this all mean? What's cool about it, just graphs out your stuff every time you do it. So you'll see like skeletal muscle mass go up, like it'll draw a line, all that stuff. Also, it tells you your visceral fat number. So that's just cool because like that literally you can see it on the piece of paper. So even if somebody, let's say, lost like 1% body fat over 3 weeks, their visceral fat number went down from 14 to like 11. And that's like really, 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 really like encouraging as well, that you can show a client like, hey, listen, like you're losing fat. Like you just aren't losing as much like subcutaneous body fat as you might starting out.
I think for clients that really like numbers as well, you know,
Yeah.
or gadgets, you know, that maybe have the Fitbit or the Apple Watch, I think giving them something like that, it can be really cool. Some people don't care, right? Some people are just like, man, whatever. But I think those ones that like numbers and stuff, it can be
For
great.
sure, for sure. And definitely, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm a big advocate of staying off the scale because with cell retention of water and fluctuation, and especially with the women and menstruation and what they have to deal with that, it is kind of it's almost impossible to actually hold that to a relevance. You guys feel about that, but I'd rather go with body fat analysis opposed to living off the scale.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I want people to use the scale because people understand it. Do you know what I mean? Like people, that's one thing everyone's always done. They don't really understand body fat testing. You know, they don't really get what it means. So, but I think the way I look at it is, and this is obviously something that maybe you develop over a period of time, is you need to assess, is the person going to be able to handle knowing their weight or handle being weighed regularly? And
For
that's
sure.
that side of
Yeah.
things.
They get obsessive over it, and it's
Exactly,
crazy.
So it's managing those things. I've definitely got some, or I've had clients in the past where, you know, exactly as you said, Tony, if their weight's gone up because of where they're on the cycle, whatever, you know, they completely lose the plot and they can't really understand that that's just the way it is. So you have to get to know your clients and maybe assess them quite quickly, I think.
Yeah,
For sure. Hey, Dave, real quick, I wanted to. You're obviously a little bit different, and I do classes as well, but you actually do like group training.
Yep.
How do you assess your clients as far as not so much the in-body, because we know you do that, but how do you assess your clients beyond that? Do you do any kind of like client questionnaires or anything like that?
Yeah. So that's kind of evolved. You know, when I first stepped up to the gym, I was basically doing a lifestyle questionnaire, which is all online, and it basically is a kind of a back end page to my website. Now it's a little more extensive in terms of you know, have the full medical questionnaire. You know, we give people as much knowledge and stuff as possible too, like before they actually start training. And this is ongoing in terms of like a survival guide and all that stuff, talking about training, nutrition, supplementation. But in terms of assessment, like if somebody's training in a group, their assessment is more or less going to be like we have things that we do like that we can do on the fly, like really quick to assess somebody like on the floor, like right when they start. And you can usually tell, like literally after you get somebody, let's be honest, like squatting, like you can usually tell, like, okay, are they going to be able to do this or not? You know, and like with one-on-one clients, because I still personally do have, I have 4 one-on-one clients that I train. And that's just obviously a little more, you know, extensive in terms of the personal side. But with them, like I do take a little more time in terms of assessment, but it's not like anything out of this world. You know what I mean? And everybody gets talked to about the gut health, you know, all that stuff in the initial consult as well. So
cool. Well, awesome. So pretty much I kind of do a blend of what both of you guys do. If they're one-on-one, so our classes are really big and it's kind of fluctuates. So we don't really do an assessment. My guys are to know if they see anything, you know, that's going to hurt somebody, then we talk to them about it. But usually people know their bodies and what's going to hurt them, what's not. But our one-on-one side, we're very, very thorough. So Mark, we do what you do. Questionnaire, it's same principles. They have to send it to us beforehand so we can analyze it. And then we also do a movement assessment, which we're pretty much looking for imperfections and, you know, single arm stuff. And, you know, we do a squat assessment as well. And the way my guys and the way we rotate is, you know, myself, I'm a little bit more able to see kind of what's going on. But what my guys are, all we do is see if something's wrong. And if something's wrong and it's too bad, if there's too many things wrong, then we outsource them to get them, you know, get them right before we train them. And for us, man, after 15 years of training, there's only been one client that actually complained about that and didn't train with us because she was excessively overweight, close to almost 100 pounds overweight. And she had bad knees, bad joints, her mobility was really bad. And we said, well, we can't train you. We have to start you off very slow. And she just didn't want to hear. But for that, you know, it's morals. We have to stick to what we know. Use a Fit 3D, which is awesome. It gives all circumference measurements, body fat analysis, very thorough. It uses the principles of the DEXA. And it also gives a postural analysis. So besides, giving us a complete picture that, we're not too thorough about that, but then we kind of can see lean and tilt and stuff like that. But it also gives us how much weight you're balancing or placing on your feet, which is kind of a tall tale sign for us. If you're 20% more on your right side compared to your left side, we know something's off. So it's just more of a gauge to how we should approach our training and before we design our program. Because if there's a lot of instability there, then we know that we have to create stability before we start trying to put any kind of hypertrophy into the situation or anything like that. So that's pretty much what we do. We try to stay as thorough as possible. And our biggest goal is to make sure people obtain goals and we don't hurt them at the same time. And we only make them better, because you guys know as well as I do, if something's seriously wrong with somebody and they come in and we don't do the correct assessment, all we're going to do is create more havoc than good, especially, in the world of nutrition. If they're coming in here and they work 15-hour days, they barely eat, the cortisol's probably through the roof, and we go in there and we hammer in the gym, what do you think that's going to do? That's going to shut them down.
Yeah.
So those are things and questions that have to be asked. And I don't know about you guys, and I don't, Mark, I know Dave, he deals with the same thing I do, but some of these like bigger box gyms and where they're all about like sell. You walk in the gym like, hey, I need a trainer. 20 minutes later, they're on there getting crushed on the floor.
Right.
Kind of how Mark, and when you were talking about how you used to be when you were younger, that's how I was too when I was running golds. Like my ultimate goal was to crush everybody, and if I crushed you, I won. Which
easy to crush.
I mean, as we learn, that's not the right thing to do. So
definitely, and we're going to probably start talking about this and maybe another talk, but I think obviously that's the way the industry's going to a certain extent, because obviously group training, your F45s and your do you have F45 over there?
We do. Yeah. It's kind of working its way over.
Yeah, that type of group training I think can be great if you're advanced already. So if you go in, so if the three of us, because we're all advanced, obviously, if we go in, but like we know how to do things right. We know how our body works. We know technique. If we go into like a very high intensity class like that, where you're doing a load of jumping around and whatever, and we're going to be fine to a certain extent. But if you're a newbie to that group and you've never done anything like that before, and you get absolutely hammered, and you're on the treadmill loads and like a Barry's boot camps type of thing, you're utterly messing up your biomechanics before you even really know what your biomechanics are. You know what I mean? There's exactly as you say. There's no assessment. There's nothing. So, and I've done that. I did that group training when I was in Australia, and there was a lot of treadmill running, and I haven't run on a treadmill for more than 10 minutes in, I don't know, maybe 15 years. And even because the problem with the treadmill is it forces you into extension, rather than if you're running across the ground, you do natural triple extension. So you often get a huge amount of dysfunction in your rectus femoral or in your quads and your hip flexors. And the difference in how tight I felt my hips were unbelievable. And one thing I was meant to say early on, when you are doing your tape measurements, the type of tape measure that you use is very, very important as well. So you'll see most people will use like a Taylor tape measure, like the yellow, long, soft one that has like the metal bits in the end. You want to use what's called a kinanthropometric tape measure, and that basically allows you to stop it, to wrap it around, to tighten it if you need to. We can put a link up for one, because I thought I had one with me here, but I'll put up a link. It's just a much more accurate way of reading it, basically.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I think we kind of gave everybody a good idea of what to expect. So my closing thing, and you guys could add what you guys want, but I want people to understand that if they go to a training facility, if they go to a trainer and they're not getting some sort of mentioned here, something's off. Because there's good trainers in our industry, there's bad trainers, there's great trainers, there's mediocre trainers. But if they're not assessing you to make sure you are good to train, I would say my best recommendation is find a different trainer. And then you guys got anything for them?
Yeah. Anything to say?
My thing is just to kind of add that I tell clients a lot in the initial consult, and this is like for people that aren't even actually a client yet. This is just me talking to people, because a lot of my leads and stuff come from either Google, seeing the reviews of the gym, and then also Facebook ads. So some people don't even know who I am when they come in to the gym, really, but I still am able to, get them to train with me because they trust me, and talking to them about a lot of these things that they probably haven't even gotten asked in the past. I guess they're impressed. I don't know. But anyways,
sunglasses.
But no, that's interesting though, mate, because it's like the exact opposite of how I get clients. You know, pretty much all of mine referrals. I train 13 different partners from one law firm, which is about a 5-minute walk away from me. So most of my clients are coming in with some form of reputation of me. But I think the key thing, like what you said, Tony, you know, that you have to be assessing. But obviously for us guys that are, you know, have been assessing for a long period of time, I think what your client needs to leave with is they need to leave understanding a few things that they can leave and say to 3 or 4 people, right, I understand why I'm not insulin sensitive, or I understand why my shoulder is out of line, or I understand why my hip is not functioning well. And because then again, if they can relay it to somebody, guess what? You're going to get more referrals.
Right.
It's really obvious, but like I think so many times people are in a consultation and the interviewer wants to show how clever or he or she is, you know, and you know people don't understand what you're talking about. You know, you don't need to pretend that you're a doctor. It's like relate things in English so that they can understand. If they're super smart and they've got a sports background, maybe you're gonna talk to them differently. Like a lot of my clients have played rugby in the past. You're going to talk to them very differently to somebody that's been a lawyer all their life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Less is more. Work smarter, not harder, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. Which everybody would know that about Mark if you listened to his podcast that he posted.
Yeah. Thanks.
See, I told you I listened to it, man. See?
Good. And so, well, what, you know, one thing that's interesting, and Tony said this off air, we all did Charles Poliquin courses, you know, back in the day, a long, long time ago. And in my opinion, the people that did his courses back in the sort of 2000s have a fairly similar train of thought of assessing, and they generally get results because there was always an emphasis on assessing in some kind.
For sure. All right, boys. Well, I think that's all we got for this one. And so our next few talks are going to be about training. We're going to dive into programming. We're going to, you know, pretty much start mapping things out for you. So to say that if this is your goals per se, you should be training like this. So this way we're just going to start spilling the training info on you and kind of put nutrition aside for a little bit because we kind of hammered that for a few weeks. So other than that, you guys got anything else to say?
No, I think just on those topics, and we're going to maybe debunk some of the current myths or trends that are very much in the fitness industry.
My favorite thing to do ever. Just like Robert Jacobs put up something that Charles put up, and I love to talk about this stuff about the agility ladder. So we're going to go into that because I love to talk about stuff like that. But other than that, man, that's it. That's all I got. Bye, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday at 1 o'clock East Coast time, 6 p.m. European time. And then that's it. That's all I got. So I'll see you guys later.
Cheers.
See you guys.